shouldn't mean that they can't have a positive conversation about building houses we happen every day. Or, in the case of the Arab-Israeli conflict, that people's different views on the Middle East should negate their ability to have a positive conversation on the relationship between Jewish philosophers in the Middle Ages. Right? What we are saying is that if we're going to have a diverse democracy, people who disagree deeply on those hugely important issues are also going to have to be able to have relationships on these other things. And we are very good. We have whole sets of civic organizations. We have whole political and civic movements that flex the muscle of advocacy for particular political and religious points of view. God bless it. Hugely important for a democracy. But if we don't also have the civic infrastructure for people who have different views to have powerful and positive relationships, we lose a single nation. By the way, this is what Iraq is about. This is what Afghanistan is about, right? People who are saying, I disagree, we Pashtuns have a different way of Islam than you Hazaras, and therefore we can't have a country together. I just want to point out, the American achievement in this is stunning. The most religiously diverse nation on the planet, with diaspora groups of all of the religious communities that are fighting elsewhere on the planet, literally in this room. We don't shed blood over religious difference. That is no small thing. Right? A couple of other questions?
Well, I think there's a lot of what Afghanistan and Iraq are about that I can't go into now, but it shouldn't be reduced to just a sectarian problem. But I was struck earlier by the hedge funds to Hollywood and the idea of diversity and incorporation, I guess, is kind of where that is. And I'm entirely uncomfortable with that because I don't, it leaves out another dimension. And I don't know if that's clear, but I wanted you to talk about that part of it. But maybe something to capture it is we have a Muslim who's going to be giving commencement address here in Dubai, and I think he might be the first one to do that, but also the first one to be on the board of trustees. But he has absolutely abhorrent record in the community. President Congolese workers at his plant and others. And I just, I'm the secular humanist in the pot, and class dimension and the economic justice that we've heard a lot about in the series is an important dimension. And I'm sorry to be so awkward.
No, I don't know. I think, thank you for bringing the issue up. And I thank you for pointing out that I have largely ignored class issues in my talk. I have, and it's an important absence to be pointed out. So I think the thing to say about that is that it's a hugely important part of identity in America. I think it is along with religion and race, it is amongst the core dynamics in our nation over the next 20 years, in a nation that is clearly becoming more polarized around these issues, and a nation in which there's, unfortunate to my political and economic viewpoint, government retrenchment for core programs and services. And one of the things I love about public universities is their accessibility, and I remember having a teary conversation with my parents in the summer of 1993, and them being like, we just can't pay for you to go to the University of Chicago. And I was really glad that a top-flight education was within my parents' economic reach, 2.5 hours south in Champaign-Urbana. So I wish I had talked more about that, and I want to thank you for bringing it up. And I think that one of the things to say about religion as it comes to class is that religious traditions have, I think, really beautiful narratives around economic fairness, really powerful moral narratives, and it's one area in which a range of religious communities come together and find find positive partnership. Here and then here.
I have just a very quick softball type of question. For those of us that question what's going on in Washington, what is the meaning of being on a presidential commission? What are your responsibilities? How do you contribute?
Oh, yeah. Well, President Obama and I will be having a phone call in about an hour. No, I'm kidding. That was a joke. So, you know, when I first got on a presidential commission, people would I'd be in India, I kid you not, I did a State Department speaking tour in India, and somebody would hand me a letter and say, will you make sure the president receives this message? And I'm like, well, no. The last time I was in the 10,000 person line to get a half-second shake of the hand with President Obama, they said you couldn't hand him anything. So, no, in most cases it doesn't mean much, frankly. There are probably 1,000 different presidential commissions in DC. Some of them mean something. If you're on the Board of Economic Advisors, it means something. I think the reason that the commission that I was on, which was the Faith Council, had any kind of media play was because it was controversial in the Bush administration. So it's one of the 5 councils that if you follow the news you might have heard about, but that frankly didn't make it any more important, right? So we had a 30-minute meeting with the president at the beginning of our term in the Oval Office, which was great. And we had a 30-minute meeting at the end of our term, which was a year-long in the Roosevelt Room, which was great. And I have told those stories ad nauseum, and for the rest of my life I will tell those stories on how the president looked me right in the eye. Me and the other 30 people in the room right in the eye. I would say for us, the single biggest thing that came out of my participation in the Faith Council was we got written into the recommendations, and there's, you know, any given day, there's 1,000 different recommendation books floating around Washington, right? But we got written into the recommendation book that the White House, the government ought to strengthen and scale interfaith programs on 500 college campuses. And because I run an interfaith organization, we could actually do something about that. So we partnered with the White House Faith Office in a program called the President's Interfaith Campus Challenge, which has had about a participation of about 500 campuses, including University of Illinois. Greg and Masood and others from here come to those convenings, which are hosted by the White House, and you know, Valerie Jarrett will speak at those, and Arnie Duncan will speak at those. So we actually got a program out of my participation in the Faith Council, but that's largely because we have a 35-person organization with a $4 million budget who had effectively the kind of organizational muscle to advance a recommendation and then to basically be the back office in terms of running the program. Yes, sir.
I have a tough question for you. I welcome your message. There's been a huge upsurge in these fringe hate groups. The Southern Poverty Center says something like a 63% increase in the number of hate groups in the last year or two. There's been a big upsurge nationwide. How do you reach these people on the fringes? I mean, some of them, many of them have a religious
that's right.
core. I mean,
Right.
even the Ku Klux Klan, I mean, they thought of themselves as a
Right.
religious group. I think finally Islam has this same problem,
Yeah.
incidentally, but within the U.S. context. How do you reach them?
Yeah. So that's, I think that's a great question. So let me begin by saying this, and you know, forgive the economic metaphor that I'm going to use here. But if I was in the private sector, I would say buy interfaith, right? The way people are saying right now, you know, buy green, buy companies that engage in the green economy because it's only going to grow over the next 30 years. I think the interfaith civil society sector is going to grow dramatically over the next 30 years. And one of the niche areas that's going to grow is how do you deal with extremist groups? We don't do that in Interfaith Youth Corps. Right? It's not a part of our expertise space. It's not a part of our methodology. What we do, because we're a limited organization, right? We're probably the single largest interfaith organization in North America.